It wasn't supposed to be this difficult. At least, that's what I used to tell myself, day after day, as I juggled the weight of my dreams and the demands of my family. As a Black woman, I had learned early on that ambition was both a blessing and a curse. I was told I could be anything, do anything if I worked hard enough. But no one ever told me about the cost. No one warned me about the sleepless nights, the guilt that gnawed at my soul, or the suffocating pressure of being the one who everyone counted on. My story is one of ambition. But it is also one of exhaustion, of fighting to find balance, of learning that sometimes, in the pursuit of one dream, another must be placed gently on hold. It's about being a dream chaser and a family keeper, a balancing act that left me questioning if I could ever do both without breaking. The dream begins. I can't remember a time when I wasn't driven by ambition. Growing up in a small southern town, my mother used to tell me, "You've got to work twice as hard to get half as far." That phrase became my mantra. I threw myself into school, determined to prove that I could rise above the circumstances that tried to limit me. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to change the world, fight for justice, and ensure that no one, especially Black women, would feel powerless in the face of the system. My passion was fueled by watching my mother, who had sacrificed so much for us. She was a warrior in her own right, working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. She had dreams too, but they were sacrificed on the altar of survival. I swore I would be different. I would chase my dreams, and I wouldn't let anything stop me. I excelled academically, graduating top of my class, and was accepted into law school. It was everything I had ever wanted, until life threw me a curveball. A new chapter, motherhood. I hadn't planned to have a family so soon, but life has a way of changing plans without your consent. Just as I was getting into the rhythm of law school, I found out I was pregnant. My husband was thrilled, I was terrified. How was I going to do this? How was I going to balance the demands of school with the responsibilities of being a mother? The pregnancy itself was difficult. I suffered from severe morning sickness, which made it hard to concentrate on my studies. I fell behind, missing lectures and turning in assignments late. My professors were sympathetic at first, but as the weeks went by, I could sense their patience wearing thin. When my son was born, I thought the hard part was over. But as any mother knows, the real challenge begins after the baby arrives. I was sleep-deprived, my mind constantly foggy, and the demands of caring for a newborn seemed unending. My ambition felt like it was slipping through my fingers, and I wasn't sure how to hold on to it. The guilt of ambition. One of the hardest parts of that time was the guilt. Every time I left my son to study, I felt like a terrible mother. Every time I put off studying to care for him, I felt like I was failing my future self. There was no winning, only a constant push and pull between 2 identities, mother and dream chaser. I began to wonder if I was being selfish. My mother never had the chance to chase her dreams, because she was too busy taking care of us. Was I making a mistake by trying to do both? Was it fair to my son? These questions haunted me, gnawing at my confidence and making me second-guess every decision I made. The pressure came from everywhere. My family, while supportive, subtly hinted that maybe I should take a break from school. They didn't understand why I was so determined to finish law school now, with a baby to care for. They saw my exhaustion, my frustration, and they worried about me. But their concern only made me feel worse. I didn't want to be a disappointment. I didn't want to let anyone down, especially not myself. The breaking point came one night, when I was sitting in the library, staring blankly at a case study, my mind a million miles away. My phone buzzed, another missed call from my husband. He had been calling for hours, worried because I hadn't checked in. I knew I should have been home hours ago, but I had convinced myself that if I just stayed a little longer, I could catch up on my studies. As I listened to his voicemail, the weight of everything came crashing down on me. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I couldn't stop them. I sat there in the middle of the library, crying silently as my ambition and my responsibilities collided in a way that felt unbearable. I realized then that I couldn't do it all, not like this. I was trying to be everything to everyone, and in the process, I was losing myself. Something had to give. The road to balance. After that night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to give up on my dreams, but I needed to find a way to pursue them without sacrificing my family or my sanity. I took a semester off from law school, something that felt like a defeat at the time but was, in fact, one of the best decisions I ever made. During that break, I focused on being a mother. I allowed myself to be present with my son in a way that I hadn't before. I learned how to ask for help, something that didn't come naturally to me. I leaned on my husband more, and we found ways to share the responsibilities of parenting. But I didn't let go of my dream. I still wanted to be a lawyer, to fight for justice, to make a difference. So when the time felt right, I returned to law school, but this time, I did it differently. I set boundaries. I learned to say no. I accepted that I couldn't be perfect in every area of my life, and that was okay. The lessons learned. Looking back on that time, I realize how much I learned about balance. It's something that we, as Black women, are rarely taught. We are often expected to be everything, to be strong, to be providers, to be caretakers, to be ambitious, to be resilient. But we're not taught how to prioritize our own needs, how to give ourselves grace, how to recognize when we need to slow down. For me, the journey to finding harmony between my ambitions and my family life was long and painful. I had to unlearn the idea that success was all or nothing. I had to redefine what success looked like for me, not just in terms of my career, but in terms of my happiness, my mental health, and my relationships. I learned that chasing your dreams doesn't mean you have to do it alone. I learned that being a good mother and being ambitious are not mutually exclusive. And I learned that sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is ask for help. Finding harmony. Today, I am a lawyer. I'm proud of the work I do, and I'm proud of the sacrifices I made to get here. But I'm also proud of the way I learned to balance my ambition with my family. I didn't have to choose one or the other. I just had to find a way to do both in a way that worked for me. There are still hard days. There are still moments when the guilt creeps in, when I feel like I'm not doing enough, either as a mother or as a professional. But I've learned to quiet those voices. I've learned to remind myself that I am enough, that I am doing the best I can, and that is all anyone can ask of me. For any Black woman out there struggling to find balance between your dreams and your responsibilities, I want you to know that it's possible. You don't have to choose. You can be a dream chaser and a family keeper. You can be ambitious and nurturing. You can have it all, just not all at once. Give yourself grace. Set boundaries. Ask for help. And remember, you are enough. My story is just one of many. Every Black woman with a dream and a family faces this balancing act, this tension between ambition and responsibility. We are not alone in this struggle, and we don't have to suffer in silence. Finding harmony in our lives is not about doing everything perfectly. It's about learning to prioritize what matters most in each season of our lives. It's about recognizing that we are worthy of our dreams and our families, and we can find a way to make space for both. It's not easy. But nothing worth having ever is. The journey of healing and support. As I began to step back and reassess my life, I knew that finding balance wasn't something I could do on my own. For so long, I had been trying to carry the weight of everything on my shoulders, my career, my family, my mental health, without realizing that no one is meant to carry so much alone. That was the first lesson I had to learn. It's okay to ask for help. My husband became my first source of support. He had always been willing to help, but I hadn't let him. I had fallen into the trap of believing that as a mother, I had to do everything myself. But the truth is, partnership is about sharing the load, and I had to let go of the fear that I was failing if I leaned on him more. We started to have deeper conversations about our roles in our family, and together we came up with a plan. He took on more responsibilities at home, and I began to carve out time for myself, time that I had neglected for far too long. I also sought professional help. Therapy became a lifeline for me. My therapist helped me unpack years of internalized pressure, guilt, and the weight of society's expectations. We worked through the narratives I had built up around being a Black woman, a wife, a mother, and a career-driven individual. She helped me understand that I had the right to define success on my own terms, and that self-care wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Through therapy, I learned practical tools for managing stress and anxiety. Meditation became a daily practice, helping me ground myself during moments of overwhelm. Journaling allowed me to process my thoughts, and instead of letting them fester, I found clarity through writing. Most importantly, I began to see that achieving balance wasn't about doing it all. It was about doing what mattered most at any given time, and being okay with leaving some things undone. I also connected with a support group for Black women juggling similar challenges. We shared our stories of balancing ambition and family, of the unique pressures we faced, and of the cultural expectations that weighed on us. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone in this struggle. Hearing their stories helped me feel validated, and together, we began to uplift each other, sharing resources and encouragement as we each found our way to balance. Rewriting my script. One of the hardest yet most rewarding steps was learning to rewrite the script I had been living by. The old script said that my worth was tied to how much I could do, how well I could perform, and how perfectly I could manage everything. It was a script that had been passed down through generations, ingrained in the experiences of Black women, who had to be strong because they had no other choice. But I was ready to live by a different set of rules. I started by setting boundaries, both at home and at work. I stopped taking on every project that came my way and began to delegate tasks. I learned to say no without guilt, understanding that every no was actually a yes to something more important, like spending time with my son or investing in my own mental health. At home, I carved out time for myself, even if it was just an hour to read a book or take a walk. I realized that I couldn't pour from an empty cup, and I began to prioritize my well-being in ways that I hadn't before. It wasn't easy. There were days when I still felt pulled in 100 different directions, and the guilt would creep back in. But over time, I became more comfortable with the idea that balance isn't about perfection. It's about making intentional choices that align with your values and being at peace with the decisions you make. A game changer, finding guidance. During this transformative period, I stumbled across a book that would change everything for me: Dream Chaser, Family Keeper, Black Women, Ambition, and Finding Harmony in Our Lives. This book felt like it had been written specifically for me. It was the first time I had seen my struggle so clearly articulated. The author, a Black woman who had walked a similar path, understood the unique challenges we face as we try to balance our drive for success with our deep-rooted sense of responsibility to our families and communities. The book laid out a series of practical steps and insights for how to create harmony between ambition and family life. It wasn't just theoretical, it was a guide filled with actionable advice that I could apply immediately. One of the most impactful chapters for me was about setting boundaries and redefining success. The author explained that we often hold ourselves to unrealistic standards, shaped by both internal and external pressures, and that the key to balance is learning to let go of those expectations. Another chapter focused on building a support system, something I had already begun to do, but the book pushed me to go even further. I realized that I needed not just emotional support but practical help as well, whether that meant hiring a babysitter when I needed time to study or asking my family to help with household chores. The book reminded me that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness, but a recognition of my own worth. As I implemented the steps outlined in the book, I began to see a real shift in my life. I became more present with my son, more focused at work, and more at peace with myself. The strategies for time management, self-care, and setting realistic goals helped me regain control of my life without sacrificing my ambitions or my family. The transformation. How it came along. In the months that followed, I felt myself transforming. The chaos that had once consumed me began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm and clarity. I was no longer constantly running on empty. I had learned how to manage my time, how to care for myself, and how to balance my roles without feeling like I had to be everything to everyone. There were still challenges, of course. Life is never without its bumps. But now, I had the tools to navigate those moments without falling apart. I could see the bigger picture. I could focus on what truly mattered, and I had finally found the harmony I had been searching for. The book that made the difference. Dream Chaser, Family Keeper, Black Women, Ambition, and Finding Harmony in Our Lives was truly the game changer for me. It wasn't just a book, it was a guide that helped me transform my life. The steps outlined in this book gave me the clarity, tools, and confidence I needed to find balance between my dreams and my family. If you're watching this and struggling the way I did, feeling torn between your ambitions and your responsibilities, wondering how you can possibly do it all, I encourage you to grab a copy of this book. It's available for digital download at libraryffy.com, and the link is in the description below. Believe me, once you practice the steps in this book, you'll realize that finding harmony isn't just possible, it's within your reach.